Okay, let's get started then. Well, Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy
Yeah.
New Year.
Happy New
Even
Year.
though, as we know in the principles, every second of every day could be a new year for us. So, but it's funny how we still, I don't do New Year's resolutions. I haven't done those for a few years now because they just are set up for another reason to beat yourself up. But it is funny how I still use it as like a reset point, and as most of the world does. So I figured that why not use this new year as a way to really just identify our codependent thinking that is creating, sorry, I mean more people joining here. I just want to make sure. Hi, Kate. Sorry, I'm going to get distracted here. So yeah, it's really important, I think, to hi Maria. So Cecilia, to really identify some behaviors that we just really would like to not carry into the next day, never mind the next year. So so before I start, as I always do in the beginning of this, I'm just going to have a few notes here just to make sure that I'm not totally going off track. But as a 3 principles teacher, I always have to say that it's too much of a mouthful to say codependent thinking behavior. So I just say codependency, codependent. We know we're not labeling anybody. We know it's not pigeonholing. We're not diagnosing. We're not doing anything like that. We know that anybody can change if you have an insight. So that's really important to say here. Excuse me, I'm croaky here. But the reason it's really, really important, I feel, particularly in the 3 principles community, I think there's a little misunderstanding sometimes that people think that if it's all just our thinking, we should be able to tolerate any situation. And I always say, if you had a broken arm or a black eye, I wouldn't be saying it's just your thinking. So the same thing, if we are inadvertently finding ourselves in painful, emotionally painful or abusive relationships, we do have the right to say, this is not working for me. I want to leave this. But what can happen is we can have codependent thinking that might even be unconscious to us, that keeps us trapped in those relationships. And so my job is, and what I love doing is, I see it actually as a marriage of psychology and the 3 principles coming together. I don't think we need to completely abandon psychology because we understand the principles. I think that, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and as such, human beings have psychology. So I think it's really important to look at that and see where this thinking originated, and by having that awareness, we can really let it go. We can have compassion for ourselves. We can understand what helped get us where we are. But when we identify it, it's easier to just let go of it. So basically, I grew up in a as many people who suffer from codependency in a bit of a traumatic environment. Very dysfunctional, very different and entertaining on some levels, but equally crazy on other levels. So I was spent, besides wanting to actually leave the planet at 19, I spent a good 30 years of my life in conventional therapy and on a spiritual path, trying to recover from my codependency and my post-traumatic stress disorder from growing up in a narcissistic environment, and repeating the pattern and inviting other narcissistic relationships in. So it was only when I came across the principles that I found the freedom I'd always looked for. It was amazing to me. I was a coach that helped other people with codependency and narcissistic abuse. And I used to sit in the room sometimes thinking, God, I can help you feel understood. I can help you identify where these feelings came from and the behavior came from and all of that. I don't really know how to show you the way out, because I don't know the way out, because I'm still stuck in it. I was doing a lot better, but I still could see that I was stuck. And it was really the principles. 10 years ago, I came across a book that just had me go, oh my God. And I saw things so differently. And it wasn't like I heard anything new. I have a master's in spiritual psychology. I had all the sort of, yes, we're all one. Yes, we're all the same. And I had the little voice in my head going, yeah, but not you. And it was with the principles and the focus on thought and how we live in a thought created reality moment to moment. And that I don't have to believe these thoughts that are in my head. That's what was new for me. And then as I started to change my relationship with my thinking, as in not taking it seriously and not believing it, I started to fall back into that place of knowing who I was at my essence. So that was my journey here, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. I still see so many people suffering from codependency and being so traumatized by it. Number one, thinking they'll never recover from it, feeling helpless in their lives, feeling helpless in their relationships. Why am I still attracting narcissistic relationships? And that's why I love doing the work that I do, because I know that there is a way out. I am 100% different than I used to be. I have been in the most loving relationship for the last 11 years with a beautiful man that just honors and cherishes me. I show up. I do a radio show, or a podcast, YouTube show. Never have done that in the past. I was so riddled with insecurity and these self-limiting thoughts that I had in my head. So it really is life-changing, and so I'm excited. So I'm assuming I pretty much know everybody here. So you're all familiar with the three principles. So I don't, unless somebody has a question, or then I'm looking at everybody here, it looks like everybody is familiar. But if you're not, just raise your hand or something, and I'll just do a very, very quick little, oh, we got a hand. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to do the best I can to give you a very, very short talk about what the principles are. So basically, it's a new, well, relatively new paradigm in the field of human psychology. It's helped, as I say, particularly myself, but thousands of other people to recover from many, oh God, I mean, just from a life of suffering, basically. So what the principles does is it describes how the thought, consciousness, and mind come together to create our experience of life. And in a nutshell, what I got from it was that I don't feel the effects of other people and the circumstances of my life. I feel the effects of my thinking about the people in my life and the circumstances in my life. So that helped me immensely in not trying to control other people and life events. I actually don't try and control myself either, or my thinking. I just know that whatever I'm thinking in the moment is going to pass. It's just energy passing through us. So the relief I felt from that, of like not trying to control everything around me and control myself, was huge. The other thing that I saw when I came across the principles is that I'm equal to everybody else. And again, as I said, it was a concept I'd heard about, but I never fully embodied before. But when I really understood, and I'll use my, oops, sorry, my cat just had a fright. My little snow globe here. We're spiritual beings. That's the center who we are. I use a little Buddha to demonstrate that live in a world, we live in this world of form where we do a lot of thinking. And when we believe our thinking, this is what happens here. We get cloudy and we forget who we are, our essence. We start believing that personal thinking. The other thing that I saw was, yeah, my personal thinking was, you not good enough, you're all these terrible things. And I thought my mind was just telling me about who I was. I don't realize that's just thoughts that go through everybody. They're not personal to me. They're not telling me about me. I was just latching onto them. So some of the other things I saw, gosh, so many things, and I can't go into it all here, but I would encourage you to look into. There's plenty of resources. I'm trying to squeeze into 1 hour what I normally teach over a 6-week period. There's a whole week that I do a week. It's an hour per week, but where I really focus on the principles and we go into it in depth. But there's tons of resources on the internet for you to learn more about it. So so basically, I just want to go through what some of the codependent traits are that are, showing up in our lives, what we suffer from either consciously or unconsciously. The first thing is that low self-esteem. So again, as I was saying, we're over-identifying with our personal insecure thoughts. And we believe that we are, less than, and we compare ourselves to others. When we remember who we are at our essence, that beautiful spiritual being we are, we're made of love and peace and joy. There's no comparison going on in that. The only comparison happens when we're up here in our personal minds. We start looking and comparing ourselves and, I'm not as good as them, or they're doing better than me, or whatever it is. But that's just happening in that tiny, tiny part of ourselves. Just like the ocean is this, we're all connected in the ocean. We're all one. The wave is just that human little expression of who we are. And it's so tiny in comparison of the mass of that ocean. So that's really helpful to me, was recognizing that. The other thing about people that suffer from codependency, and I'll go into this a little bit later, where some of the things originate from, but we have a massive, massive fear of abandonment. And that usually definitely has come from a childhood where there was instability, or there was trauma, anything like that, that we feared abandonment. As adults, we can't be abandoned. We can be left. We might not like it, but, we're adults. We can fend for ourselves. But as children, we are dependent on our parents. But if we suffered from feeling that abandonment as a child, that thinking is still stuck somewhere inside us. And we operate from that place. And when we operate from that place, we're afraid of being alone. We have weak boundaries because we want to stay attached to the other person. We feel that we can't live without them, that our love or our security comes from them. So that fear of abandonment and fear of being alone really has us compromise our values and our boundaries. And the other one is, again, and this is from the low self-esteem, is the needing outside validation from somebody else. When we don't really stand in our power and know that we are really these amazing amazing spiritual beings having a human experience, these amazing beings, when we forget that, we start looking for other people to tell us how great we are. And we don't need to do that. When we remember who we are at our essence, we're fine. We don't look for that. So that, again, that makes us very vulnerable to certain situations, like narcissistic situations, where they might love bomb you in the beginning, and you're so sort of, your sense of self is so fragile, that feels like, oh my God, it's like honey. It's like, please give me more, give me more. I love that feeling. But when inside you're pretty hot shit on your own, you don't fall victim to that. You really don't. You're just like, well, that's nice, but you're not, you don't have that yearning to keep having that void filled and filled. And again, when I was codependent, I felt so inadequate, so not good enough, so weak, so fragile, all of these things. I looked to other people to complete me. So I tended to be attracted to quite sort of powerful, aggressive, narcissistic types, sorry, my cat's coming to have a little hello. You know, and because I felt like, you know, I wanted to stay in the shadows. It's like, you know, you be out there and fighting for us in the world, and I'll just be the loving, nurturing, taking care of you back over here type of person. And what ends up happening is when you look to somebody else to complete you, especially if it is in that role, they can often start turning on you and dominating and controlling and overpowering you. So my cat's having a she usually lies here very quietly, uninterrupting everything. So again, it's like, you know, when we know that we are complete already on the inside, we don't need somebody else to complete us. Again, we're not vulnerable to that. People pleasing, oh my God, that's the other thing. I mean, that's what we do when we fear abandonment. We want to make everybody happy around us, you know, so we're always focused on other people, meeting their needs, negating our own needs. Is everybody happy? And then also it's a thing where we, you know, we like to be needed. It's all based in that insecurity of fearing abandonment. If we are needed in a relationship, and this can be in a work environment too, if our boss needs us, so we show up, we don't just give 100%, we give 150%, because we want to be valued. You know, if they need us, you know, the underlying thing is, if they need us, they might not abandon us, because we're indispensable. But what we do is we burn ourselves out with that, and we end up resenting, because we're, you know, we're giving that 150%. And then the other thing that can happen too is when we make somebody else responsible for our happiness, and what we're doing is, you know, we're going like that to them to validate us, to give us what we want. And if we don't get that from them, especially if we're given 150%, you know, there's a little bit more of a sense of, you better, you know, value me and give it back to me. You can get so resentful. And resentment is just an internal alarm system saying you're giving more than you can afford to give. So it's good, it's feedback. It's that feeling like, if I'm resentful, I'm either making somebody else responsible for my happiness, or I'm giving more than I can afford to give, which is unfair, actually. It's unfair on the other people in our lives. And they can do it to us too. I mean, it can go both ways, but really knowing that nobody else in the world is going to take care of us as well as we can take care of ourselves is so freeing. But when we look to other people and give them that responsibility, but that is coming from that old childhood wound. Because as a child, you really did need them to take care of you. The other one is, oh gosh, a lot of people that suffer from codependency are, believe it or not, we're not all weak and pathetic and simpering. Some of us are really type A personalities, you know? We don't like to give up. We are hard workers, and we've invested in somebody or something, and we're not going to give up. And I often liken that too as well. It's like, you know, I know when I was in some of my not so healthy relationships, I felt like I was at a slot machine, and I don't even gamble, but I know that much. I've seen people put like pennies in a slot machine, and they're just waiting for that big payout, you know, and they know they're giving more than they're getting back, but they keep investing and they keep investing. And then they start to think, oh God, you know, I've been here for however hours, days, years, whatever, putting in, there's going to be a big payout. And I don't want to get up off the seat, walk away, and have some other person come in, sit down and put 1/4 in and get the payout. So we often can keep ourselves in that trap of hoping that things are going to change, that this one last bit of an investment is going to, that other person, whether it's your partner or your parent or your boss, is going to have this big aha moment and give you what you want. So that's a really, really tricky one, because it's, when is it time to give up? So as I said, if we're type A's, Oh, hi, Molly. Hi. So I'm just going to mute everybody right now. So that's the other one. Oh gosh, pretending to be needless and wantless. And again, this is something from childhood. Often, if our parents were unavailable, they were too busy, they had an alcohol, rather a substance abuse problem or a mental health problem, or they were narcissistic or whatever it was. But if you had normal childhood needs, which every child has, and you got the impression that you were too much for your parents, or you were, too needy. That was mine. Oh my God. My mother was overwhelmed. She had 7 children, no father, and she converted our home into, or rented an old mansion, filled it with 55 mentally handicapped and mentally ill residents. And she was overwhelmed. And her message was, be needless and wantless. So I carried that through life. I would meet somebody and I'd be like, oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. I have no needs. I have no wants. And then I get in a relationship with them, and then I start going, well, I want this or I want that. And they would be like, wait a minute, that's not who I started dating, because a narcissist loves needless and wantless, because, they are so important. They want their needs to be catered to. So if you show up as, pretending not to have a need and a want, you're an absolute magnet for a narcissist. So it's really important to show up really authentic off the bat. Just be yourself, warts and all. Yeah, I have needs and wants too. But just again, understanding that was just a habit we picked up in childhood, in trying to, I knew that if I had a need and a want, my mother pushed me away. So the only way I could get close to her was to be completely independent as a 4-year-old, which is not, not realistic. But that's the thinking I had then. I need to be this way to be able to be near her. I'm just thinking. Oh, and now the other thing I just want to say here is, we can feel a lot of shame here, a lot of shame around having, moved our boundaries when people have pushed up against them. They've lied to us or cheated or abused or whatever. And we've moved those boundaries back to accommodate because we've feared losing that relationship, or that, whether again is or job or whatever it is. And we end up sort of, settling for less, settling for crumbs, because we believe that's as good as it gets. And then we have shame around that. And what I really, really want to get across is that there is no shame in this. Often this behavior has taken root at a very, very early age. And when we were children, we had no other choice. But now that we're adults, we can make other choices. But again, be really, really gentle with ourselves. This is a lifetime of undoing this habitual thinking that's been running our lives. We've all been doing the best we can with our level of thinking and consciousness in the time. Nobody intentionally, shows up in life saying, I'm not going to, I'm going to allow myself to be hurt and abused or anything like that. We don't do that. So to really, really be gentle with yourselves. And that's why I wanted to mention that, as children, most children who experience codependency, or rather grow into adults with codependency, they've come from some childhood trauma, some neglect, abuse. That was certainly the case in my case. As I said, if you grew up in an alcoholic family or something like that, you were used to a certain level of chaos in your life. That became your norm. And quite often, if you grew up in that, anything less than drama in your adult life feels like, I used to say, if I met a nice guy, I used to think, oh, I'm going to die of boredom. It's like, where's the drama? Where's the intrigue? Where's the fire? Where's the, all of that stuff that I was used to? And then children who've raised to take care of the emotional needs of your parent. Again, if your parent was unable or inadequate parenting, you became the little parent. So you grew up taking care of others, nurturing, putting yourself second. That's, these are all things. And sometimes even inconsistent parenting, if a parent was ill or hospitalized for a long period of time, or they actually died, unfortunately, a child experiences that as abandonment. They don't know that the parent didn't have a choice. They just feel abandoned. So there's really legitimate reasons why. Again, if you grew up with a narcissistic parent, that's equally, you're not valued for yourself. You're valued for being an extension of them. So again, it's like you negate yourself and you try and tune into other people. Who do you want me to be? How do you want me to be? How do I get love? The other thing is sometimes it can be a codependent parent, or one that's sort of smothering or is too uses the child for the emotional needs to be met. That can feel really confusing for a child. They don't know where they end and the parent, or rather the parent ends and they begin. It's a very, that enmeshment. If you've learned that from a child, you sort of seek that in your relationships. You seek to be enmeshed with another person. You're not sort of healthy and individuated. That's that sort of, that closeness. You don't feel close unless you're sort of like attached like that. Again, we've touched on this, children who are shamed by their parents for having normal childhood needs. Another one is, and especially I think, for my generation, there was a style of parenting where you shamed your child into being a good person. It was innocently done, but again, that abandonment trigger, it's like if you for some reason didn't behave yourself, your parents withdrew their love. Now, to a young child, that again, that's abandonment. If you don't love me, who's going to take care of me? I could die. I mean, that is life or death to a child. So this constant sort of withdrawal of affection or love when you've done something that your parent has disapproved of can create this absolute vulnerability of abandonment. Some of the others are, well, and this is another one too, the rescue fantasy. This is helped by fairy tales. I mean, my God, but if you grew up in a traumatic environment, you just want to be rescued. And then you read fairy stories like sort of, Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty and Beauty and the Beast. And some of those, it's like, yeah, someday a prince is going to come along and rescue me and it's all going to be better. I didn't know my father growing up, even though he only lived a couple of miles down the road from me. I never spoke to him till I was actually turning 30. And I had this fantasy that if he was in my life would be better. If so I carried that into my adulthood. I was like, a man will make my life better. So I was constantly seeking to be in a relationship, because I just didn't feel secure or adequate enough to survive on my own. So, and then the other fairy tales we can also get lured into is the Beauty and the Beast. It's like, somebody can hold me hostage and abuse me, and I'm just going to love them so much that they're going to turn into a prince. And again, it's, it's that rescue fantasy or that fantasy, basically. So I just want to go over again, because I know we've got a couple of people here that aren't familiar with the principles, what it was about the principles that changed how I showed up in my life dramatically. So as I said before, the principles made me see that I was equal to everybody else. And when I remember who I am at my essence, that beautiful spiritual being that I am, I know that I deserve to be loved and respected. I know that I don't have to compromise to be loved. I don't need somebody to complete me. When I know not to believe these insecure, codependent thoughts in my head, then they're not telling me about me. Again, I can drop back into that essence of who I am. And at that essence, as I said before, we're made of love. That's who we are. So when I know that my feelings of love are coming from within me, not from the outside in, I don't need to be in a relationship to feel love. Because my children actually sometimes say to me, why are you so loving? And I just say, because I love being in my loving. And that means I love being in the essence, be really sinking into the essence of who I am. And when I'm sitting in that place, I feel so loving. And it just comes out of me. Before, when I was younger, when I was a child, I felt so unloved. I felt empty, and I kept going to other people to fill me up with love. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And it was this bottomless pit, and whatever love they expressed, it just fell through me, because I didn't realize that it was something within me. I often say it's almost like standing in a lake of beautiful, crystal clear, gorgeous water with an empty cup going, I'm thirsty, fill me up, not knowing that I was already standing in this incredible, beautiful, crystal clear water that would quench my thirst. That's how love felt for me. Also knowing that I'm resilient, knowing that we're all created with this incredible resiliency, this innate well-being, this inner GPS, we call it, our wisdom that can guide me, and that it doesn't matter what happens in my life, I'm going to be okay. That's what the principles taught me. So again, I wasn't trying to cling on to somebody else for that security. I also knew, a lot of us have had things happen to us as children, or, certainly, things happened to me. And knowing that I wasn't broken, that I wasn't damaged, that something might have happened in the world of form, but acknowledging that I was impacted by that. I'm not going to dismiss it. I was impacted by that. But when I saw that I wasn't damaged at my core, that the essence of me could never be broken or damaged, that was huge for me. The other thing is too, this is really big, when you know that you have that resilience in you and that innate well-being and that inner guidance, everybody else has it too. So you stop rescuing other people. You know that they are actually okay and they'll figure it out for themselves. And when you see that you're rescuing, because we like to sort of, it's a bit of a blind spot sometimes. We think we feel so good, we're so kind, we're so loving because we rescue people. But when we cop to the fact that a lot of the rescuing we're doing is for us to feel good, but we're actually robbing the other person. This is especially true, I think, with children. When we rob them of finding out or touching into their own resilience, their own wisdom, doesn't mean we're not loving, doesn't mean we are cold or withdrawing. I am very unconditionally loving with my children, but I've learned to give them the space to hear their own wisdom. And I'll say, oh my God, I love that. I love you listen to your wisdom. I love that you figured that out. So it's still a very loving, it's not a punitive, but I've learned to just not rescue so much. What else? Oh my God, a huge one for me. Separate realities. When I saw that we all live in this thought-created little bubble like that, all sort of living in our thinking, thinking that, that there's a real world out there. Well, it's actually our world is created within us, within our thinking. When I saw that, I stopped trying to figure out other people that may have lied to me, cheated on me, abused me, molested me, whatever it was. I stopped trying to figure out why they did the things they did, because I knew that they were just living in their own thought-created little bubble, and they And for whatever reason, they behaved based on their thinking. It wasn't anything to do with me. I didn't ask for it. I didn't cause it. And I don't have to fix it. And what I do know is that I don't have to give those people one more ounce of my energy or my time or my suffering. I just want to get on with life. I want to be, and that's the other thing that the principles points to, is that, you know, in our personal minds, in our little personal minds up here, and all that thinking, we tend to go into the future and into the past. We very rarely are in the present moment when we're up in this personal mind. Now, when we're at our essence, that beautiful spiritual essence that we are, that's when we are so present in the present moment. So I live as much as I can, because I'm human and we're going to get hijacked every now and again, and we're going to get caught up in that thinking. But I live from that present moment. And from that present moment, I don't suffer. I only suffer when I start going into the past and when I start going into the future. Often regret lives in the past for me and fear lives in the future. But when I stay in the present moment, I am solid, I'm grounded. I know that I'm going to be okay no matter what happens. And another big thing that I also find is a lot of people that have been in narcissistic relationships are afraid of getting back in them. They're afraid of getting hurt again. Well, you know what, I'll tell you, I've been devastated. I have absolutely been devastated. And that is a gift, because I know that I got through that. So if I got through it before, I can get through it again if I have to. You know, because we you know, people are, nothing's set in stone. People do things that sometimes appear crazy to us or hurtful to us. We never know what's going to happen. But my knowing my resilience has actually kept my heart wider open than it ever was before. People have said to me, how could you ever trust again? How could you love again? And I'm like, because I know how strong I am. Why would I choose to live closed up? You know, that to me is where we are, as I said, we're spiritual beings. We're made of love. We are meant to connect. We're meant to share that love. And to guard it is goes against who we are, who we truly are. So anyway, I would love to open it up for questions. I just do want to say a little quick thing. This is a sort of a real trying to fit everything in 40 minutes here that normally takes me 6 weeks or 6 hours rather, over a 6-week course to address. If anybody does want to learn more, my course starts next Saturday. It's 6 weeks. It's for an hour a week. It's the first week is a deep dive into the principles. We really get into, even if you know about them already, it's lovely to have a refresher on them. Week 2 is about, you know, codependency, and again, a much deeper dive, and really understanding and compassionately understanding how we develop this type of thinking. Week 6 is understanding narcissism. And again, narcissism is not a dirty word. This is not name calling. It's a painful disorder for everybody involved. It's born out of fear and insecurity and low self-esteem as well. It just manifests in a very different way that can be very harmful for people. The 4th week is understanding the dynamics, recognizing if you're in that narcissistic codependent relationship. And there's tons of things there, like this trauma bonding, gaslighting, love bombing, you know, ghosting. There's a ton of terms that we go through to learn what that looks like, and the craziness that you can feel if you're in one of those relationships. And again, it's not just a love relationship. If it's, you know, if it's a parent of yours or a sibling or a boss, I have a lot of clients that it's their boss that they're trying to deal with and understand. Week 5 is, should I stay or should I go? Because again, you know, not everybody wants to go. A lot of people want to stay, and there's ways that you can stay that are less damaging to yourself. And sometimes, you know, again, it might be a work environment where you don't want to give up your job, or it might be a parent, an aging parent. A lot of us in my age group anyway are now dealing with narcissistic parents. Both my parents are now passed away, but you know, where they start to get older and you start to sort of need to take care of them or want to take care of them, but you're re-experiencing that childhood trauma that you had, because you know, that dynamic is still there. You can't separate, but there is ways to have a healthy, or a healthier, I should say, relationship with the narcissist in your life. And then if you should decide to go, and the last week is about how to achieve happy and healthy relationships through the understanding of the principles. And again, it's principles underlines all of this. Without it, I belong to some websites with codependence, and I listen to the feeds, and I'm like, and you can't post anything, so you read them, and my heart is breaking. There is thousands and thousands of people out there suffering, and they don't know there's a way out. And I wish I could just advertise on them and say, please come over here, learn the principles, you'll find the freedom you're looking for. But unfortunately, I can't. So I'm just hoping over time that more people will, you know, in that community, will find their way into the principles. So yeah, and I just also wanted to mention it's early bird special ends. Actually, I'm not going to even have it end. It starts next week. I'm going to just roll it through. It's $195 if anybody wants to sign up for that for the 6 weeks. So said my bit. So I'd love to have questions. Anybody have any questions? Please just raise your hand. There's a few of you, so maybe we'll use the participants button. We'll just use the hand raising. It says at the bottom, if you go, it's usually this is participants button, isn't it? Yeah, I don't know why it's not showing up, or maybe it's because I'm hosting, it's not showing up. But anybody have any questions I'd like to ask? Yes, Jennifer. Just unmute yourself. You're still muted. Oh, there we go.
Sorry, I actually don't have a very clear question formulated, but I do think that you deserve a question after all that. So I would like to try and formulate something.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm also very luckily, for the last 7 years, I've been in the principles, and I don't feel that I'm about to go anywhere or get out of anything. But it's an interesting thing came up for me recently and over the last year, is that you know, I had whatever background I had in childhood and so on, and I had a lot to work through. As I would hardly even use the word codependency now, but anyway, I think it's a sort of a way of explaining where I was at, and then it suddenly and yeah, so it's shown up in my life in my grandfather, my great grandfather, you know, my father, the man I chose to marry, my relationships. Now I'm going to need to cough. Sorry, I've got a frog in my throat. So, but what really surprised me, because it showed up as well in my sons. I have 3 children, and then what really surprised me was when this has shown up again with my grandchild. and that's it's just so interesting, so fascinating, and so rich. And So yeah, do you have anything to say about that? I don't know if that's a question.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I don't, are you referring more to codependency or narcissism or the it doesn't really matter, actually. I'll answer.
No, I don't think it really matters. But in my case, there was an alcohol story. And maybe I can describe a little photograph, a photograph from my childhood that whereas it's a black and white photograph that my father took, and he used to take selfies. He would set them up, he would take them, and then he would develop them and print them. And in this photograph, there's a picture of my older brother. It was a picnic. He took a photo of a family picnic with my mother and my older brother and himself and me as a tiny baby. And in fact, he'd set up the photograph. So my older brother was scratching a plate with a sharp knife. My mother was eating her lunch, and she was pregnant, not visibly pregnant, but I know she was pregnant with my younger brother. And then my dad had set up this photograph so that he was at the back. He would set up a timer, you know, in the old days with he would set up a timer, and then he'd just pick up the baby and go and sit at get into the picture at the back. So he'd manipulated the whole thing. He'd orchestrated this photograph, which is not one of the ones that was important to me as I was growing up. I just found it recently. But it seemed so interesting to me that, what is interesting about it? It's aesthetically very interesting, but also he was obviously showing something. He'd obviously had a couple of beers, and he was, and he was in the photograph. I can just see that I was in his, you know, sort of part of this totally chaotic life. I was absolutely at ease with it. I was absolutely present in the moment, and you know, the picture is there to show. Anyway, so now, yeah, I haven't sort of gone into looking at you know, types of people and all that, but now why it came up is that now with my grandson, I have this very strong feeling that having a little baby, holding a baby, is going to do me good. I feel the wellspring of well-being in connection with the baby. And my son didn't want me near the baby, and he refused to let me touch the baby and hold the baby. And it was very upsetting for me because it's the one thing that in the principles that I've found very difficult is to understand the concept of innate well-being, and that's a baby has well-being. You know, that goes against a lot of things that I learned about psychology and so on. Anyway.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Well, I'll go back to what you first talked about for a second. Without a doubt, you know, there's been so many books written, John Bradshaw, a number of people on family systems and how generationally we will, patterns are repeated. They'll often say with codependency, it's the learned behavior. As like I said, if you have a codependent parent that's enmeshed with you, that, you know, you enmeshment feels normal to you, so you will repeat it, not only with your partners but with your children too. So that can go down. The same with narcissism. I mean, they say, is it genetic? Is it learned? Is it, you know, often a narcissistic parent will have, you know, a favorite child, the golden child. That's the narcissist. And, you know, I'm not talking politics here, but we cannot ignore the fact that we have a president that is, you know, I think pretty clearly narcissistic. And if you understand his background, he had a narcissistic parent, a father, that he was the golden child of. So to keep in the good graces of a narcissistic parent, we often emulate them to keep that connection, to keep that approval. And then the other kids all become codependent because they're just trying to get what they can get from a narcissistic parent. So it's fascinating how these roles, and, you know, I think, and then to your second part about the innate well-being, the innate well-being really, for me, is that in that spiritual essence of who we are. We all come onto this planet as spiritual beings with that innate well-being within us. Now, sometimes in the world of form, it might not look like we have well-being. It might look like the world is chaotic, or it's a vulnerable little baby, or somebody's deep into addiction, or they're suicidal. Whatever it manifests in the world of form, it can sometimes look like, well, what do you mean they've got innate well-being? I can't see it. They're threatening to kill themselves. They're a young baby. They can't take care of themselves. Whatever it is, but the innate well-being we're talking about is on the spiritual level. That can never be touched and never damaged. And that is in there. And I don't know if that answers it enough. The situation with your son, I mean, my heart goes out to you. I'm sure as a grandmother, you just want to hold your grandchild. Again, knowing the separate realities, that whatever thoughts are going through your son's head are his. They're nothing to do with you. That he's just acting out on his thinking, and we don't know what it is. But to just to know that he's doing the best he can with the thinking he has and his level of consciousness, and to not take it personally. It's really, really helpful. I don't know if that's helpful to you or not. I hope it is.
Oh, yes, it is. And it's also reminded me of that image you shared about the standing in this beautiful pool of water with a cup, empty cup. And that harkens back to this wellspring, this well-being, which is, it's like a spring that comes through us, in fact, and it's there. You don't, you know, it's just spiritual, as you say.
Yeah. It is, but when we're looking in the other direction, it's so hard for some. It's always there. It's always
Yes.
there. We never have to find it. You know, it's not like, it's like when, you know, people say, I want to love myself. Like, you know, how do I learn to love myself? It's like, no, you already love yourself.
Yes.
You're just looking in the wrong direction.
Yes.
It's there when we just,
yes.
You know, I often have a very sort of like physical feeling, a bit like my gut, my intuition. That's where my spiritual essence is. And then I'm always like, up here is my chattery little personal mind. It's got lots of stories in it, lots of thinking. And but when I feel, I mean, that's why our feelings are so important. They're so important. They're telling us when we're in here. If we're suffering, it's because we're lost in here. So all it's doing, it's a lovely little, it's like when Linda Pransky says, it's like, you know, when you got a car and you're like backing up, you're going to hit a wall. It's like beep, 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 you know, and it's like, that's what feelings are. It's like beep, 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 beep. You're listening to this. It's like, oh yeah. And then you drop back down into that beautiful space that's always there, never went anywhere. You just got a little distracted for a while. So, oh, Dawn, you knew I was going to call on you if you didn't put your hand up.
I just, bless you. I just had this moment where, with the codependency part of it, as someone who's been codependent on a lot of narcissists in her life, I think I'm most excited about is that for the first time in my life, this understanding teaches me what's right with me rather than what's wrong with me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's a miracle. You know, I was thinking about 15 years of recovery, 12-step recovery. I was part of COSA, CODA. You can go through all the lists if you like. But I was always focused on the narcissist. I was always focused on the fact that I'm ill and there's something always going to be ill. And I was even noticing this week after your workshop last time where, you know, the amount of questions I have about, you know, trying to deeply understand the narcissist. Now I don't actually care. And it's wonderful because it's just like this feeling of going like, yeah, I understand what they did, but it's no longer my specialist subject.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how to fix it. And it's like today I realized, you know, I'm sitting here, scratching my head going, why do I have to go through this again? And I realized I've got a chance to have another go round, because this way now I'm learning how to love myself rather than how to fix myself, which I just wanted to say, because I just thought that was really exciting. It's like, oh, wow. You mean I could kind of understand the codependency and how it impacts me and my well-being rather than something always to fix. And that's what the principle has kind of taught me. But yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of occurred to me in the last week that all of a sudden I've just been freed from the desire to make narcissism, my narcissist, my specialist subject. It's just kind of boring. And yeah, I just excited. That's just like, I just wanted to share that because that's like really fun.
It's exciting for me to hear that because it's so true. Because I mean, that's a lot of what I experience is like the people like, yeah, I know I'm codependent, but let's learn more about the narcissist. And it's like, you will get to the point where it's like, yeah, done that, been there, done that. You know, I think it's good to recognize red flags sometimes, just so you don't get sucked in again. But it really is. This is all about recognizing your own unconscious thinking or even conscious thinking, you know, whatever, it doesn't matter. But it's not about, we don't have to fix ourselves. I love that you see that, Dawn, because we don't. Like I said, the only thing that's happened is we got a little distracted with some thinking that's not true. That's all that's happened. And we can laugh at it and we can love ourselves and we can go, oh God, so innocent, so innocent. And then we can just plop back into who we really are. And we're going to get, you know, that little trip backwards and forwards happens because we're human. It's going to happen. But I love that you're seeing it, because I do see, and again, I have so much compassion because I was there myself. Oh my God, I spent years trying to understand narcissists and fix them and fix myself so that I could still stay with them, and you know, all the stuff I did. And even after my last relationship, I laugh. It's like I still spent another 5 years in therapy talking about it. I might as well have stayed in it because I was still trying to understand, how could they have done this? How, what, you know? And then when I found the principles, I was like, it's really none of my business. It's like they just have a separate reality. I can get on with my life. So it's really exciting. I love that you saw that. So
I can't wait. I can't wait to dig deeper. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you, though.
All right. Thank you so much. Antonia?
Hi, Del.
Hi.
Thank you so much for all of this. This has been, yeah, really enlightening to me. I only sort of began to understand narcissism as I was getting out of a divorce after 22 years of being in a marriage that was riddled with it. And only recently discovering that my dad is definitely a narcissist. Didn't get that one. I like, how did I not pick it up? And my sister she was the favorite child. When you said that, I was like, oh, okay, that's how it worked. Okay, cool. But the question that I have for you is that, so my dad has always lived far away from me. He was living with, there's 3 daughters, and he was living with my youngest sister, who, it's the middle one, who was the favored one, who's just sort of, we just realized like, oh, wow, that's why we always end up upset when she comes for Christmas. It's like, oh, got it. But he's just moved here close to me. I knew that for years my sister's been taking a lot of strain. But as I said, we just thought he was a really difficult old man. And it was so much easier for me to be compassionate to him when he was on the other side of the country. And I'm finding it so difficult to to live with his like, I still want to help him. I see he's getting frail, but if I give him that much, he'll take everything, including, you know, he'll move in, like literally, and take over everything. And I'm struggling. I'm sort of swaying between being a little bit angry and resentful and compassionate and feeling so sorry for him. And I know that I'm not, I know it's his reality. I get that. But I don't know what I'm not seeing.
It's well, thank you for your question. And it's like I said, this is challenging. I have so many clients that are in this situation. It's like, oh, it was like this growing up, and now I'm right back in it. And it's how to navigate that in a way where you feel self-honoring, and it's individual to each person. I managed to have a relationship with my mother in the end that I absolutely adored her. She was still a raging narcissist, but I knew how to, I knew how to, you know, we think of boundaries sometimes on the outside of us, like I used to anyway, that boundary's there. Oh, you've overstepped that boundary.
Yeah.
Now, boundary, the only boundary we ever have control of is the one that's internal, our internal boundary.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And so nobody can violate that. They can, if you put rules out there, they can push them and move them and smudge them in the sand and do all these things. But that internal one is up to you. And it's checking in with you to find out what feels right to you. Sometimes people choose, like I wanted to have a relationship with my mother, maybe because I didn't grow up with a father, she was all I had, but I knew how to manage it in the end. Well, I also came to live on the other end of the earth, you know, when I was 21. I mean, that was convenient. I could go back and see her and my family like once or twice a year. But towards the end of her life, I did visit more often because I was stronger. I had healthier, that internal boundary was healthier. I knew what I was willing to give and what I wasn't. And I could actually laugh at some of her outrageous behavior. I didn't take it personally anymore. Did try and, you know, hold a mirror up to her, because, you know, you can't pants a narcissist, you know, it's like, that's like putting your head in the lion's mouth. It's prodding the sleeping bear. But there are ways that you can really come from it from a really empowered place, and you will check in with yourself what works for you or not. And I highly recommend you do the 6 weeks with me, because I've had people go through this with the exact situation and they've come out the other end like feeling so empowered with this exact situation, because it's not like, you know, oh, thank you, Duku, see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye. So yeah, it's achievable. It really is. And there's a freedom in it. Right now, I get where you're at, because it's like you've had that distance and now it's like back in your front door again. And without a doubt, you know, people that have, you know, narcissistic behavior, it's like, yeah, you give an inch and they will, like, you open that door a crack and it's like pushed open, they've moved in. It's the, you know, it's all about them. But it's, I'll leave you with a little, well, I won't leave you, we'll go on as long as anybody wants to talk. But it's like the story of the frog and the scorpion. Has everybody heard that? It's anyway, so there's a frog that's swimming from one end of the bank to the other end of the bank. And there's a scorpion. And the scorpion says, can I hitch a ride to the other side of the bank? And the frogs, because scorpions can't swim, and obviously the frog can. So the frog says, oh, you know, I don't know about that. You know, you're a scorpion, you might sting me. And the scorpion says to the frog, no, I promise I won't sting you. I've got to get to the other side of the bank. You know, I want to go there. So the frog goes, okay, all right then. So hop on the back. So the scorpion hops on the back of the frog, and frog starts swimming across, and halfway across, the scorpion stings him. As the frog is dying, he says, you know, why did you do that? And then the scorpion says, because I'm a scorpion. And that's The narcissists, they do what they do. And and again, I know that's not 3P, because we all like to say that, you know, everybody can change if they have an insight, which is absolutely true.
Yes. Sure.
What you have to understand with somebody is locked into their narcissistic view of life, they often don't see a reason to change.
Yeah.
They feel
I see that.
So the chances of somebody with narcissistic behavior changing is far less than the codependent, because the codependent is going, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Fix me. You know, they're looking for answers. The person suffering from narcissistic is like, no, they're winning. They're controlling, they're dominating, they're winning. Why would they change? So it's very important to know that unless there's a miracle that happens, which I believe in the 3 principles, there's always the possibility and somebody can change, but it has to change from within, not by you pointing out their narcissistic behavior. So knowing that most narcissists will continue to behave the way they've behaved in the past, it's really up to you, like Dawn was saying, how the change is over here within you, and not fixing. There's no fixing to be done, because we're already perfectly perfect as we are. The change comes with the thinking, with that relationship with the thinking. You change that relationship, and then you can plot back into who you really are. And narcissists can do their dance, and they can throw their tantrums, and they can play their games, and it won't affect you. There is ways to handle it that we do go much deeper in the 6 weeks, because there are definite ways that you will not feel the impact that you've felt in the past if you do certain things. But it's about you, not them. So hopefully that was helpful.
Thank you. It was. I love the internal boundary versus that really is powerful.
Yeah.
And if I possibly can do your course, I will. I'll be in comms. I'd love to. Thank you, Del.
My pleasure. Thank you. Anybody else? I'm not in a hurry, so if anybody else has a question or a comment, I am totally open to it. Let me just see what's that chat. I think that was Luca saying goodbye. Yes, he said goodbye. So anybody else?
Well, I can just add something to what you were saying about you mentioned the favorite child. And that was the role that I played with my father. And I was the eldest daughter, and I had an older brother and a younger brother and 3 younger sisters, and I was the favorite child. And it was a very weird relationship, I must say. You know, I don't. It was a very.
There's no good guy, bad guy in this. There really isn't. I mean, I have a sibling. I'm one of 7 siblings. I have a sibling that was clearly my mother's favorite. I had so much compassion for her, because being my mother's favorite came at a high price, very high price, a price that I wouldn't be willing to pay. Another sibling of mine resented my sister that was the favorite, and I was like, you want to pay that price? Nope. I'd rather be second, to that. But yeah, so it's oh, thank you so much, Antonio. I know you have to go. Aaron, you have your hand up. I'd love to have a question from you. Do you want to unmute yourself? Yep, we have you here.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Just a thank you, really. I found it really, I listened to the one I missed the other week, or that you did on the 19th. It's quite mind-blowing, really, when you recognise the kind of relationships you've been in for years. And again, just with the 3 Ps, knowing to be settled in that, you kind of don't want to go back that direction. So you kind of put in your little list of the not giving up, the fairy tales, the rescuing. I was the famous rescuer. It's quite interesting, those roles that I've slipped into over the years. But one thing with it, because I was never conscious that I felt I was doing something to actually feel good. To me, I was just coming from a loving space with the rescuing, because I've not been aware that any of that I was doing to feel good for myself.
Mhm. Yeah, it can be very unconscious and very innocent. But we often give to other people what we wish we'd had received ourselves. So often when we're over loving and over nurturing, it's because we didn't get that as a child. So we give what we would like to have received. Do you know what I mean? It's very subtle. It's very subtle.
Yeah.
There's nothing, no shame in being a rescuer. I'll cop to it. I can still be a bit of a rescuer. I'll be really honest. I'm more aware of it, and I definitely sort of sit on my hands, but I veer on that side without a doubt, because I am a compassionate person, and if I can help, I want to help. That just is there. But I also know, I just know that I can negate myself and I can give too much. I really can. I mean, there was a time when I'd be giving, I'm like, my bank account was like 0. I would give you my last penny every time. And I would be like, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. And then I was just like, what am I doing? You know, I'm stressing. I'm worried about where my next, rent check is coming from, and I'm giving it away. So it's just, it's good to have that awareness. It's good to be able to start to flex that muscle of, I matter too. It's okay to say no. I just wrote a blog about it a couple of weeks ago. It's okay to say no. I grew up, you do not say no. You say yes to everybody. You just keep giving and giving and giving until you fall down and you've got nothing left to give. And I always used to, how I have children, and you get on the plane and they'd say, put your mask on yourself first. I thought, how ridiculous. What mother's ever going to do that? Of course you mask your kids up first. But I can see there is wisdom in that. When we are actually taking care of ourselves, we do have more to give. So I just in case Nancy has to go, she just asked a quick question, but it doesn't mean we stop. Let me just answer, and then I can come back to Sharon if you still want to say. Says, what time is next week? It starts at 10 o'clock, same time, 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Runs for 6 weeks. Just go to Adey-Jones.com and you'll get the whole list of the breakdown of what the weeks look like and what we'll be covering. And it's the 4th time I'm offering it. I'm thrilled with it. I constantly get, great feedback. People seem to be to have got a lot out of it. So I'm really, really happy about that. And open to feedback too. If people want something else, there's always, I present for about 40 minutes and then we open up for Q&A for 20 minutes or so. Again, I'm never in a hurry to get off if there's a lot of Q&A that people want. So Sharon, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did, and definitely within the understanding, the fixer bit, to be able to see that was huge, to know that I don't need to do that. Their wisdom is there to find it themselves. Absolutely. Yeah. But one thing you said last week, in whenever it was in your recording, and again when you said that I hear come out my mouth a lot, is the boring bit, the boring person. I don't want to be in these kind of relationships that I've been in, to the point I end up ill before I finally do something. But I definitely guess there's more to see on what I class as the boring person who just hasn't got that life or excitement in there. I really struggle with that still. So
I can't remember what I said a couple of weeks ago, but I'll just visit it for a second. A lot of people go, where's the chemistry? Now, they don't realize that chemistry is actually a reactivation of an old wound. And I always say it's like chemistry is like, here's my wound, your teeth match my wound. It's like, oh, like I didn't have a father growing up, an absent father. who just completely abandoned us and lived 2 miles down the road. I just kept falling in love with unavailable men because their teeth matched my wound. And I kept going for that. And because it's, you know, we want to reenact our childhoods and have a nice ending. It's like, so if I can win over an unavailable man, that was like sort of making something right about my abandonment for my father. It was like, you know, it was a redo. So sometimes we can unconsciously do that. So I always say, be really aware of going for chemistry, as we call it. The other thing is, if we are used to drama and high intensity, that's our norm. So unless we've got tension in our relationships, we do feel bored because our set point is different. Now, when I left my long-term relationship, I didn't want to be in another relationship. I wanted to raise my children. And I knew I had this tendency to fall madly in love, emphasis on madly. And I didn't want to be madly in love. I wanted to be a good mum. So I said, I'm not going to be in love. I'm going to be a parent right now. So I met somebody that was a lovely man who I basically said, but a bit boring, you know, for me, first day, and I tell him all the time now, but that first date, I was like, not for me, not long term, no drama here, no whatever. But because I didn't want to be madly in love, I thought, oh, he's a wonderful person to have in my life right now, because we're just going to be friends and I've got somebody to do things with and I'm not going to be distracted from being a parent. But what happened was after months went by, I was like, oh my God, I love this about them. And God, he's so amazing. And he's so kind. And he's so great with his children. And he's so great to animals. And I actually ended up going to work with him. And he was so great to work for. And he was great with everybody else that he worked with. And I started to really, really, really fall in love. Real love that's based on respect. And I could have missed out on that if I'd been looking for the chemistry. I mean, he was handsome. I thought he was very cute, but there wasn't, you know, whatever, you know, I'm just saying, I kept thinking this is not going to work out. And, you know, 11 years later, I adore him and I have such a deep love and the love does keep growing. So yeah, I really do recommend that people stay in long enough to really to learn more about the other person and not make quick decisions about, oh, this is, you know, this is too boring or whatever it is, because there's a different quality to the love. And yeah, it's fascinating. It really is. But I love what you're seeing, and I can see you're seeing a lot of different things. So I'm excited for you.
Thanks, Del.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks for asking your questions. And anybody else before we leave? Want to say anything? Or
Hi, Del. This is Nancy here.
Nancy? Oh, Nancy, hi. How are you?
I have a question. I've been listening and I've been enjoying everything you say and been relating to it. I'm a USM grad.
Yeah, I saw that.
So I just want, and I touched in and been to a couple of, I think I forgot her name, but she's a USM grad too, who does the 3 principles as well.
Rohini, maybe?
Yeah, Rohini, yeah. And we've met before at Jimmy's, Rosenberg's party, like years ago.
Oh, lovely.
So I guess, you know, the thing that I've been dealing with is I have a friend that's like a lifelong friend that I've grown up with, like a best friend from like teenager. And I've been coming to realize like this kind of, you know, the concepts of narcissistic and codependency. And I think as a child, I was like the secret favorite daughter of my dad, while my sister was the public one. So I deal with a lot of finding my voice and like, you know, having my needs met too. And you said something about, you were talking about like when we're in relationships, where there's drama or versus calm. Um, I still find that I'm trying to have my voice heard from in relationships where I'm speaking up for myself or trying to have them understand my reality. When you said separate realities, I really liked that. But I want to be acknowledged for my reality. Is that considered codependency? Like if you're wanting to get somebody to understand your point of view or where you're coming from?
I think that's just being human. I mean, that's what
Okay.
the beauty of the principles is. We sort of start letting that go a bit, because it's more like we're what can happen a lot. Okay, as a child, especially if a narcissistic parent or a parent that whatever parent can't see you for who you are, can't see you for yourself. And that can be because they're narcissistic and you have to be an extension of them and make them look good. They don't see you as a separate individual being. A parent that's either heavily into addiction or mental health issues won't really see you. So often if we grow up in a traumatic environment or an environment that's dysfunctional or there's been any of those issues, we don't feel seen and heard. That's just a core need for every child coming onto this planet. We want to be seen, heard, valued, and loved. And if for any reason there was a lack of that, we have this drive to be seen and heard. I had, and you can often have a competing drive of wanting to hide because the world is a scary place. I had those competing things. There was a part of me that was always hiding, always playing safe, because it was dangerous and vulnerable to be seen as a child for me. But there was this underlying need to be seen and heard too, to have that need met that wasn't met as a child. So I don't know entirely the circumstances. I mean, I'd love to know more. But often, I mean, you mentioned a friendship, and I don't know if you're saying that sometimes your friend appears to be narcissistic.
I would say with with understanding it more, they are definitely the narcissist and I'm definitely the codependent. I'm always overgiving and being there. And then I'm always not having it. It's not mutual. But if I go back to the core of what happened with my father, which I would say has narcissistic tendencies, the dynamic was when I was little, my dad used to come to me emotionally and lean on me emotionally if he fought with my mother and cry about not wanting to leave the family, get a divorce. And to this day, they're still together. And I thought we had this, and it would be like I would be asleep in bed and he'd be crying on me. And I thought that was like a deep connection. And the next day he would totally ignore me, not even look at me. And then he would totally publicly in front of the rest of the family adore and cherish and show affection to my younger sister. So I had a great I really got hurt. I would feel very hurt by it. And I would be quiet about it. I would be very quiet and internalize it. And at the same time, I had this kind of upset with my younger sister. And that's kind of gone. I feel like that's still always there.
Well, it's so understandable from what you just shared there. It's so understandable. I mean, unfortunately, and it's no judgment on your father. He clearly was doing the best he could with his thinking, his level of consciousness, but he was absolutely parentifying you. He was using you for his emotional needs to be met if he fought with your mother and putting you in a very, very difficult situation as a young child. And then he clearly had some shame around it and would the next day react by pushing you away. So he was clearly struggling with healthy boundaries himself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very understandable how you would develop some codependent traits, behaviors, because of some thinking that just took root at an early age. It's not, as Dawn was saying earlier, it's you're not broken, you're not damaged. You just develop some coping mechanisms as a young child that are not healthy anymore. They served a purpose as a young child. They helped you survive, and maintain a connection with a parent that you needed for survival. But when we take that thinking into our adult life and it affects how we show up in our friendships and our relationships, you know, we need to reevaluate that and see the truth of it, or the misunderstanding of it, that it actually isn't, you know, it isn't serving us anymore. We really need to sort of let go of that. So again, I think it's really, it's so helpful. Again, it's, I love what Dawn said, because it really is. It's like, this is, it's so exciting about what we can learn about ourselves. And I particularly love this in the principles, because I do find sometimes some people can be a bit dismissive. It's all just your thinking, and we don't need to go into history, and we don't need to go into psychology. I am here to firmly say, I love the marriage of psychology and the three principles. I love it. It's fascinating.
Mhm.
We are in a human form, and we do have it. So to understand it can only, I think, help benefit how we show up to life. But again, the underpinning is the understanding of the principles, which is where the freedom is. So hopefully that was helpful to you.
Thanks, Del. I just wanted to add one more quick question,
Sure.
if that's okay.
Yeah.
I find that when the emotions are triggered, or if you're lost, you guys use the term lost in thought, and that you're feeling a feeling separate, or, you know, hurt or wounded. Sometimes it's hard to kind of just, like, you're feeling the feeling. I find it's hard to kind of go in the mental to try to like bypass what I'm feeling. Is the three principles, like, how would you say applying the three principles when you're triggered emotionally, when you're in the pain or suffering? How would you say that it supports or heals?
Well, for me, I never, if I feel something, I'm going to damn well feel it till the cows come home. It's mine to feel as long as I want. I don't feel, I never, before in the past, I would fear my feelings. I'd panic if I felt depression or anger or something. I would feel like, oh, I'm uncomfortable. I can't bear this. I've got to do something about it. I've got to change it. I've got to do a spiritual bypass. I've got to, you know, talk myself out of it. Now I'm just like, it's just a feeling. I don't like it. I'm not wishing it upon myself, but it's here. It's going to stay as long as it wants to stay, and it's going to move on when it's ready to move on. I don't judge it. I don't try and control it, because the more that you put effort onto something and wrestle with it, you're making it, for me, stick around a little bit longer. You know, I just am like, okay, this is what's visiting today. I'm, you know, some of it's conscious. I know that I'm thinking something, and I can go, okay, I'm feeling this thinking right now. Some of my thinking is unconscious. Sometimes I just feel a bit blue. Sometimes I'm just in a low mood, and I don't know where it's coming from. But I don't panic anymore, because I know that it's energy moving through me, and I know that it will just move on its own accord. And I'm much, much more comfortable now feeling the whole range of what humans feel. I firmly believe that we would never have been created to feel the capacity and the range of emotions that we have access to if any of them were bad. It's like a painting. It's like a, you know, it's like a coloring box. You know, I happen to like dark muted colors. You know, I like some strong jewel cut tones sometimes, but, you know, I just think use all the colors. I'm a painter. Use all the colors. You know, depth. You know, it's like a tapestry. You need the darks, the lights, the shadows, the shades. You need it all to have a full experience. So that's how I feel about life. I can have a day where I had a day a few months back when the Black Lives Matter was happening, where I'd put a Black Lives frame around my face, and I got some really well, not anti-Semitic, but racial slurs just like attacking me on Facebook. I was shocked. I was so shocked. I felt violated. I cried. I felt compassion, a deeper compassion for people of color and what they go through. And I've run the whole gamut of emotions. At the end of the day, I was like, whoa, what it is like to be alive. I just felt everything you can ever feel in a day. And I was fine with it. So I don't know if that helps or not, answer that question.
Thank you, Del. Does it's got the it got it, I'm like thinking so, and I appreciate everything you're sharing. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Lovely to have you on today. So anybody else before we leave? Well, it's lovely to see all your smiling faces, the ones I can see, and I love seeing all the names of the other people. And yes, if anybody's interested, it's a 6-week program, starts next Saturday, 10 a.m. Pacific Coast time. And excuse me, all the recordings are available if people can't make it live. And hope to see you there. And just go on my website if you're interested in joining up. And if not, it's been lovely spending this morning with you, and thank you for your questions and your contributions and input and everything. And take care and Happy New Year again. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.